Hi everybody and welcome to a new video. My name is Eduardo and today we're going to talk about the fashion industry and COVID-19. So here's a brief outline for presentation. It's a brief introduction, the effects on production and supply chain, the rise of digital, China, bankruptcies and M&As, Fashion Week and the future. So there are a lot of things to cover and this might be a mid-length video, but bear with me. It's a pretty interesting subject and I hope you enjoy it. So let's start from the beginning. As we all know, on March 11, 2020, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. So borders got shut, production halted, and an ongoing period of isolation started, not to mention the economic crisis. So a lot of industries were disrupted and fashion wasn't the exception. So what happened regarding production and supply chain? Well, in an attempt to reduce losses, brands cancel the orders on suppliers and manufacturers. This is because retailers also cancel the orders on brands. So the problem was taken from the retailers to the brands and all the way down to countries like Bangladesh, Cambodia, India, and Myanmar, in which there's a higher concentration of garment workers. So as you all know, the fashion industry has a big issue in terms of how transparent the supply chain really is and how they treat their workers, how they're being exploited, and how low their salaries are. So things were bad. And with the COVID crisis, things got a lot worse. A lot of government workers weren't getting paid or were even fired without a severance. Just to get a number in your head, it is estimated there are close to 60 million garment workers in the world. Now, on the not so dark side, we saw an increased need for personal protective equipment, right? And this later created a shortage that started affecting hospitals and medical personnel. So, as a response, some fashion brands and groups use their supply chain and alter their supply chains in order to produce and distribute this PPE to the front lines. So we have examples like Burberry, New Balance, Hermenegildo Seña, and LVMH, which is the biggest conglomerate in the fashion industry. Now let's talk about digital. So with store closures all over the world, e-commerce went through a massive growth in 2020. I mean, in just 1 year, it almost duplicated its share on fashion sales from 16% to 29%. Obviously, the biggest winners of this were fashion marketplaces like Zalando and Farfetch. But we also start seeing how brands adopted a new way of making business in the digital environment. So we saw live stream commerce, social commerce, which is investing in the social networks like Instagram and TikTok, chats, in order to talk more and not losing the interaction with the clients, and digital clienteling, which was a massive and a big step forward for luxury because, as you know, it is really dependent on this face-to-face interaction with the client, this personalized attention and service. So taking all this process to Zoom was a new thing for luxury and fashion. Now, this whole adoption of digital doesn't mean that physical retail is dead. What it is dead is boring retail. So what companies and brands have to do is to evaluate the return of investment of their stores. How are they delivering the overall purchase experience, the fashion experience, both digitally and physically, in what is called an omni-channel strategy in order to make everything connected, all the sales channels connected, and make it a real experience. Now let's talk about China. China has been on a trend toward dictating the future of fashion for quite some time. And this is because it's increasing middle class, market size, and how tech savvy the consumer really is. Now, just to get another number in your head, it is expected by 2030 that China's share of fashion and luxury goods will be 50%. With this, I mean that 1 out of 2 goods of fashion and luxury will be bought by Chinese consumers. So it's pretty big and there's a lot of market right there. We've seen even store closures in the West of some brands, while the same brands are opening stores in China right in 2020, 2021. Now, we've also seen in China what is called a repatriation of Chinese spending. This is because the majority of the luxury and fashion goods that were bought by Chinese customers were bought abroad in countries like Europe, like France and Italy. And this is because the price in those countries are lower than in China. So with this ongoing travel restrictions and with and these cooperation between brands and government, the Chinese price for the goods start to go down and be and match the price of the in these other countries. So that's what is called a repatriation because people and Chinese customers are spending more money domestically. Finally, we also see an increased growth in the usage of digital environments such as Weibo, which is a chat service, Douyin, which is the Chinese TikTok, and Alibaba's Tmall Luxury Pavilion, which is an e-marketplace for luxury brands. So this went through a massive growth during the COVID pandemic because of the adoption of digital. Now, when it comes to companies, we saw in every industry a lot of companies struggling for money and for liquidity. So we saw lots of companies going bankrupt, and fashion that happened too. It happened with JCPenney, Neiman Marcus, and Brooks Brothers. Now, given this environment, it is expected by analysts that a greater consolidation is on its way. With this, I mean that big conglomerates such as LVMH, Kering, Richemont, all this are going to buy struggling companies or not so stable companies at a bargaining price, or even readjusting the initial price of an acquisition, which is just what happened with LVMH acquisition of Tiffany & Co. It started at $16 billion and now was reduced to $15.8 billion. It might not sound like a lot, but I mean it's a $0.2 billion reduction in the price, and this was due to the COVID crisis, and I mean that's what LVMH in some part used as a justification of reducing the acquisition price. And now let's talk about fashion weeks. So with the ongoing travel restrictions and the social distancing measures, brands needed to present their new collections in a new way, in different ways. So we start seeing things like short film and recorded runways with no invitees, and live streams, which was kind of the norm in the industry. Now we start seeing like an adoption of technologies like gaming and virtual fashion. If you're more interested in this one, you can see Soleil or Balenciaga. And also a returning to the more physical show or a as physical as they could. And for example, brands like J.W. Anderson sent their show in a box through the mail, which was another way to interact with the invitees to the fashion show. Now, regarding the clothes, we saw a focus on comfort and loungewear due to the current isolation state that we were facing, or we are facing. And finally, sustainability was also a major concept adopted by brands. And this was due to two main reasons. The first reason was this trend towards a more sustainable and a more eco-friendly industry. And the second main reason was because this shortage of supplies and this closure of suppliers, and I mean the overall crisis, the travel restrictions, etc., and how the goods arrived to the companies and the time, etc. I mean, all this created like a crisis for the brands that in order to reduce the risk, they had to use things that they had in stock, which is called dead stock fabric. Maybe fabric from past collections and repurpose it and create something new. So it was a major change in the creative aspect of the industry too. Now let's talk about the future. With the new hope of a vaccine and us seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, the trends in the clothes and the collection for this fall winter season are taking a more outgoing direction, or more glamorous direction, if you like to say that way. Because now people are hoping they're going to return to social gatherings, and they have to be loud, they're excited to dress up again, right? Nevertheless, the comfort factor hasn't been lost in these new collections. Also, it is a common assumption by analysts that this COVID crisis, what it did was accelerate pre pandemic trends, such as the adoption of digital, China's growing market, and the industry's involvement in social and environmental issues. Me personally, I believe the same, but I'd like to see this crisis as an opportunity for us and for the industry, which I love and I admire so much, to slow it down a little. I mean, we have brands making 12 collections a year. Um, I mean, fashion industry is one of the most polluting, if not the most polluting industry in the world, and and I mean, there's a lot of social issues to solve, and the rights of the workers. I mean, there are a lot of problems, and I hope this COVID crisis has served as a moment of pause and slowing down things a little, right? And we've started seeing big changes in the industry. I can talk to you guys about it in another video, and well, I think that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. You increased your knowledge on the fashion industry, and I increase also your hunger to know more about it. So thank you very much, and bye.